welcome to another Design Clips here at W+9. This is Dawn Woolslegel, and today I am participating in the dailymarker.com's 30-day coloring challenge. It kicked off yesterday, but today we're doing a hop, and I am excited to play along. I've got a little bit different video than I've done in the past for these coloring challenges, but if you're new to this coloring challenge, you can find all of the links in the description box below, and it'll take you over to Kathy Rakusin's blog, who hosts this challenge, and it's a lot of fun, so I encourage you to play along. So as I said, this time around I'm taking a different approach to the 30-day color challenge, and I am going to attempt a floral study. I want to try to do a different flower every day. Now, sometimes these may span a couple of days depending on the coloring method that I choose or how involved I want to get with it. And some days, you know, hey, time just gets away with us, so I may have to skip a day or two, but that's going to be my goal. I'm starting off with the rose. And here you can see this is how I start sketching my flowers. I usually do a very rough outline, and this is just to capture the shape. So I've got a reference photo off to the side, and if you're looking for photos to practice, you can Google the flower and you'll get a ton of pictures that come up. Now, if you're not selling it, you're just using it for practice, don't worry, you can use any photo as your reference. If you are trying to create something that you'll want to sell, you'll want to make sure that you're using some free domain photos if you're not using your own. So I believe pixabay.com has photos that are royalty free, and then something like, what is it, free domain pictures? Oh, my mind just went blank. freedomainpictures.net, I believe it is. I'm not 100% positive, but if you Google that, you'll be able to find out exactly what it is. So this is basically how I would start any of my floral stamp sets as well. I almost always, if it's a floral set, 98% of the time it starts as a hand-drawn sketch first. Now, how detailed I get with that sketch before moving to digital format will vary, but again, 95% of the time, I go much further with my hand illustration than I intend to, because really, even for digital, I just need the basic form. But once I get started, this for me is so relaxing, which is why I felt like it would be perfect for me and the 30-day color challenge. 30-day color challenge focuses on taking a couple minutes out of each day to color because it's a good stress reliever. And for me, this is my stress relief. Once I get started, I can't stop. It almost becomes like a time suck. Okay, so I first started by creating 3 circles, which would be that inner bud of the flower, the bowl, and then the second ring of petals, and then the third ring of petals. Then I'm going to come in and, working from the inside out, I'm going to start drawing each individual petal. So you can see here, I'm working very lightly. I'm just sketching these in, very loose and very light. And this will make it easier for me to make any adjustments later. I'm not married to any of these shapes at this point. Right now, I'm just trying to get in a rough guide of each petal. I like to do all of my sketching on the Strathmore Mixed Media, what are they? It's the Strathmore Mixed Media paper, but it's in the tablets. I have several different sizes. What I do is I go up to Michael's when they're buy one, get one half off or whatever, and I will pick up a bunch of these. I have tons of them laying in my studio, in my office area. This is what I do all my sketching on. I love the weight of the paper. I believe it's the 400 series. Plus, I don't have to commit to what medium I'm going to use to do any coloring if I choose to. If I do it on this paper to begin with, I can do wet or dry media, and I don't have to mess around with a light box and transferring my image to another sheet of paper. You can also see that I'm just using a good old cheap mechanical pencil. These are my favorite to illustrate with as well. You never need to sharpen them, and they're inexpensive. And I don't know, they just feel, the weight of them, they just feel good in my hand. I can get nice light pressure, and a great fine line when you want to finally come in and reinforce lines. I don't know. To me, the good old cheap mechanical pencils can't be beat. The other thing I really couldn't live without when it comes to my sketching is the mono eraser. You can see it off to the right-hand side there. I can't live without this thing. It is great. It is this tiny little detail eraser. So once I do finally get everything the way I like it, and I've went in and reinforced the lines I want to keep, I can go in with that eraser even into the smallest areas and get rid of any lines I don't want. So that one right there is another I highly recommend if you want to do sketching, if you love doing sketching or you want to get into it. Now here is where I can start shifting this to differentiate mine from the photo. There's quite a few petals that look good in the photo, but I didn't think that they translated well into my drawing. So here, like that petal, I wrapped it around the front, whereas in the photo it was not wrapped around the front. And then there's an extra petal in here that is again in the photo, and I just decided to get rid of it altogether from mine. I just felt like it worked better without that extra petal, and it's the petal on the far left, and you'll be able to see I felt like the shape looked off in the illustration with that petal, so I just got rid of it. When I'm doing flower studies, I like to draw the flowers I like to draw them at a couple different angles and in a couple different stages of bloom, along with some of their leaves or foliage. And I'll go ahead and do that off camera. And then once I've got all of my sketches the way I like them, I come in and do my inking. And I like to use a good old fine tip Sharpie pen and a micron. I like the 005 because it's a really fine tip. It's finer than that Sharpie pen. So then I have two different line weights to work with there. I know, super expensive materials. Hey, you don't need fancy, expensive materials to do good work. I'm just saying. Work with what you've got. Okay, so these lines are going to be permanent. We're using a permanent Sharpie marker here. So I am following my guidelines, but my pencil marks, again, are just that. They're just my guidelines. This is where I'm going to add any details to those lines that I need to add in. For instance, the petals of a rose, once they get further away from the center of the rose, the older petals, they are going to be a little more ragged. Some of them might have rips or notches or just almost ruffled like edges. This is when I would add those in. So again, those pencil lines are just my guidelines, and I'm going to add any of the detail on those edges at this stage. I am going to work pretty slowly. I do have this at twice the speed, so I am going just a little more slowly than it appears, but I am being more careful and I'm making adjustments if I need to at this point. That line that I just laid down is more inside than the guideline that I drew, but as I was inking it, I just felt like it would look better a little further in. Here you can see that I'm bringing that petal out further than my guideline was, and that's fine as well. This is where I'm going to make those little tweaks and those changes. I'm going to do all of my inking, and then I will come back after I've finished my inking and my ink is dry. You want to wait a second because you don't want to smear it. But after that ink is dry, I'll come in with an eraser, and then I can get rid of all of my sketch marks, all of that extra pencil, stray pencil marks or anything. So I just do that all at once. I like to do my bolder, heavier outlining first, and that's with the Sharpie. And then I'll come in and add any fine guidelines with the micron. And that just depends on the style that I feel like I'm going to finish the image out in. And I'll show you what I mean in just a little bit. So I'm just going to finish doing all of this bold outline, and then I can come in and add some detail with my micron. And the amount of detail that I add with the micron depends on how or what I want to do with this illustration. So for example, if I were going to create a stamp from this, I would only add in the minimal detail that I needed to translate into the stamp itself. Once I had that detail in, I would then photograph it and I would take it into my art program, and then I would re-illustrate it digitally using a Wacom. So I know it's double work. I'm illustrating it again, but to me, the feel of the pen or the pencil on paper, I just tend to get the best results. Plus, again, I don't like to be stuck to my computer all the time. So if I can sit and sketch and be with my family in the family area or the living room or at the kitchen table while they're watching TV or whatever, I would much rather do that than be stuck in my office. So for me, that's just, it works. Now, if I did not want to turn this into a stamp and I was just doing an illustration piece, I would go further with this and the shading. And you can see I'm starting to get further into it. And eventually, I'm just going to go ahead and warn you, I end up shading this entire flower using that micron pen. And I will show you it because this just, again, I was in the zone and it got away from me. And before I knew it, I was like, I'm coloring this whole flower with a micron. So, but I digress. If I were just doing it for a stamp, I would add the minimal amount, like these little veins that go up the middle of the petals here, the little areas where they curve or dip, and then I would stop there. And I would keep this as my template. And I have tons and tons of flowers. Just about every, like I said, floral stamp set that I've done, you will find a hand illustrated master file like this. Okay, so they all get stored together, and then I can use them for multiple things. If I wanted to do a painting of this later, I could just take the master, put it on my light box, sketch it onto watercolor paper, and then I could watercolor it. So it seems like a lot of extra work, but in the long run, it's less work because I don't have to re-illustrate things over and over again because I used my illustration in the final piece. I created a master so I can reuse them several times. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, so it was about here that I decided that I was going to go ham with this shading, all right? And this is where I decided I was going to color this entire thing pretty much with these markers. So I went ahead and you saw I did all of my erasing of all of my sketch lines and got rid of all the stray pencil marks. And now it is time to really start laying in the detail and the shadow work and the quote unquote color of this rose. So I have sped this up quite a bit now. I am literally making small ticks and dashes, and sometimes I do some a little bit of cross hatching, but for the most part it's like tick, 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 tick. So yeah, you guys do not want to watch that at full speed. I want to say this clip was 35 minutes long. So it took me about 35 minutes to do all of the shading with the micron. And I have condensed it down to about 4 minutes. So I think I put it at like 8 times the speed. So I wish I could color or draw or illustrate, or I wish I could do anything this quickly. I would get so much more done. But alas, I am kind of slow as molasses. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy watching this, even though it is in fast motion. It'll give you an idea of the steps and the buildup and how it progresses. So I know sometimes you look at an end product and you're like, how does that happen? I could never do that. And I'm not a master artist or anything. I learn more and more every time I illustrate. So I never used to consider myself a graphic artist. I've worked in the graphic art and design field how long has it been? 18, 28, 38, like 21 years. And I never really considered myself a graphic artist or an illustrator until recently, in the last probably 10 years or so. I find that illustrating on the computer using, Illustrator or Photoshop is so much different than illustrating with traditional mediums. So it's something that if you practice it, the more you do it, the easier it will become and the better you will get, just like anything in life. And so anytime you look at something, a finished piece, just remember it started from somewhere. So this started as just pencil sketches. And then as it progressed, as I started to ink those lines, and then now as I start to add the shading with the micron pen and stuff, it really starts to take shape and become 3D like. There's definitely still some mistakes in this. I will admit my hand was starting to cramp. I was starting to get tired. And I believe I killed this micron pen. I think all of the ink is gone. It's pretty dry now. But, you know, I like the way it turned out. I had fun doing it. And I learned some stuff. I learned that I should probably take breaks when my hand starts to cramp so that I don't get lazy and start taking shortcuts, which is something that I started to do. It'll get a little sloppy, but there's usually a way to camouflage it and hide it. So like I said, hopefully seeing this, even though it's in fast motion, seeing it come together will give you an idea of how to build things up and how they don't just start off looking finished from the start. That's obvious, I guess, but sometimes you just need that visual affirmation to be like, oh yeah, look, that started as like a blank outlined petal and now it looks very three-dimensional and it has lots of shading. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit different than our normal, but it's a kind of a behind the scenes look at how a lot of our floral stamp sets start out. So again, I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to find out more about the 30-day color challenge, be sure to check the description box. I'll have the links to the dailymarker.com as well as the link to the blog post. This is part of a hop and there are prizes to be won along the way, so you'll definitely want to check out how everyone else is interpreting the color challenge. There's usually a lot of great tips to pick up on, and like I said, there's prizes along the way, so be sure to check that out. Also, you'll notice that rosebud up in the left-hand corner. I do have footage of me coloring that as well. I say coloring, I mean it loosely. I'll be using graphite and blender stumps. So if you would like to see that video, leave it in the comments below. Also, let me know, would you like me to voice it over or would you prefer music? I will not be offended either way, trust me. Just let me know your preference. Again, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!